I'm here today to share some good news with you, hopefully, but also to give you some historical information about the city of Eunice that makes me pretty proud. Even though I'm not from Eunice to start with, as I got in and started digging, there's some things about Eunice that really got my attention. And I'm here today as the commander of the Veterans of Foreign Wars. But I'm here today to speak to you about our sister organization, which is the American Legion. And a lot of people don't know the differences between the three veterans organizations we have in the city. You have the Veterans of Foreign Wars, you have the American Legion, and you have the Disabled American Vets. The qualifications to get into any of these veterans organizations is number one. Anybody who has served honorably in the military can belong to the American Legion. That is the first, and nationally, that's the largest veterans organization. If you've served in the military honorably, in other words, got an honorable discharge, no matter where you served in the world or in the country or even in the state, you qualify to become a member of the American Legion. If you have served in a conflict overseas, a war overseas, such as the Vietnam conflict, the Korean War, World War II, obviously. There are no World War I veterans left. And there are very few World War II veterans left. And it's getting to be that way for us Vietnam veterans too. We're a diminishing species. But the Middle Eastern wars or whatever, if you served in the war, not during the war, but in the war, then you qualify for the Veterans of Foreign Wars or the VFW. If you served in the service and you have on your discharge, if you had a disability, a confirmed disability as a result of a problem that you had in the military, and that, obviously in a war that could be any number of things, but even if you weren't in a war but you're disabled, you can belong to the DAV or the Disabled American Vets. Now that I've explained the differences in them, I would like to encourage you, if you have anybody in your family who is in the military, or any of your friends, or any of your grandchildren or children that are in the military, please encourage them to join one or all of those organizations, because the contributions that they make to the veterans is paramount. And the contributions and the things that we do for the community is a lot. So I encourage you to do that. But I'm here today to talk to you about the legacy of the American Legion Hall, which is right down at the end of the street, and how it affected the city of Eunice. As we reach the end of the 125th year of Eunice, I just reflect back on what the role of the American Legion in that home has had and its contribution to the city. Eunice was chartered as a village on September 12th, 1894, just shortly before Turkey was born. And it was incorporated as a town on June 4th, 1895. The American Legion organization in whole was founded on March 15th, 1919 at the American Club near the Place de l'Accordia in Paris, France. And it was organized by the members of the American Expeditionary Force. It was chartered in the U.S. Congress on September 16th, 1919. At that time, Eunice was 25 years old. That was the beginning of the American Legion. The American Legion post in Eunice was conceived by a few World War I veterans who desired to continue their association and comradeship under the principles, ideals, and purposes of the American Legion. And they realized too that by binding themselves together and bringing other veterans into the folds of the American organization, or the Veterans Organization, they could render incalculable services to veterans and the community and the state and the nation. In the beginning, the post was meager and small. They really had no place to meet except for a barren, rented hall. And the members were only sufficient in number to really secure a charter. On May 17, 1926, a charter was issued to the Robert Turner Post 129 in Eunice, Louisiana. Eunice was 32 years old at that time. In the beginning of 1927, the membership was increased and the work of the Legion was well on its way. Of particular significance is the baseball club was crowned as the Louisiana semi-professional champions for the state of Louisiana. The increasing number of members organized the 4th of July celebration. And at each important occasion that happened within the city, they furnished speakers from the district or the state level for any of those occasions. How many of y'all remember the baseball teams of the American Legion? Did any of you play on those baseball teams? Just you, Chucky? Okay. It's actually, I think the baseball teams were in existence for a long time beyond that. The membership continued to grow, and by 1930, practically every Legionnaire within the state had heard of the tremendous activities and the services by the work of the Eunice American Legion Post. This was particularly true of American Legion Day at the Tri-Parish Fair. The Post had demonstrated its leadership in the community, district, state, and national affairs of the American Legion. I wasn't even aware, I knew that we had the Tri-Parish Fair here, but I was not aware that there was a given day during the fair that was designated as the American Legion. I found that out when I was when I was looking for the history of this post. In October 1929, the Depression struck, and that triggered the stock market crash. The entire nation was affected severely in 1930, but in 1931 it began to take its toll. The city and the parish were short of cash, and they were in fear that they weren't going to be able to make payroll for the teachers, and they would probably have to close the schools early in the school year. The American Legion Post, ever aware of its responsibility, made a substantial donation to the Eunice Chamber of Commerce and began to cash script, which was paid to the local school teachers in lieu of cash when the funds of the St. Landry Parish School Board were exhausted. From September 1931 until December of 1934, the Legion, now this is 31 and 34, 1931 and 34, so just keep that in mind. The Legion contributed more than $4,000 for community welfare and relief. The donations were made and services rendered to the community chest, the community chest, the junior baseball, and other relief forms. The exchanging of Louisiana highway script, the sending of 6 people to Charity Hospital in New Orleans, and various other community services was provided by the Legion during the 30s when times were really tough. In 1933, it was determined that it was time for the Post to build a home. There was two reasons for building the home. One was they needed a home, and the second, they realized that they could promote the economics within the city by investing in building a home. Plans were made, but it was not until 1934 that the Post actually purchased 3 lots on the corner of Park Avenue and 3rd Street from the Knights of Columbus. On July 4th of that year, for 2 days, there were ceremonies, and the cornerstone was laid for the new building. The building was completed on December 22nd, 1934. And on December 23rd, the department commander of the American Legion, national representatives of the American Legion, and state officials for the state of Louisiana dedicated the new home. Eunice was 40 years old. On September 6, 1935, the first of many public dances was held at the Post home. The admission was $1.50 a couple. The music was provided by Judge Scott and his orchestra. How many of y'all have ever attended a dance at the American Legion Post? Just 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're starting to get some. Okay. I wish I could have. I think it would have been a blast. Yeah, looking at the floor, the second floor level of that home, with that hardwood floor, and just imagining. I guess they had bands sometimes. They probably had DJs as well. But I can just imagine that meeting up there for dances would have been.
Square dancing up there.
Square dancing? Yeah, it would have been a blast. Would have been a blast. In June of 1936, a typhoon cooling system. This is 1936. This is pre-air conditioning now. Was added to the home, and that brought the total investment to build a home and for this final completion with the typhoon air conditioning. Final investment for the American Legion to $25,000 in 1936. Legion continued its work, but on the day of infamy, December 7th, 1941, the post immediately recognized its responsibilities imposed by the commencement of World War II. A branch of the United Service Organizations was housed in the post home. A Veterans Information Center was inaugurated with the sponsorship of the American Legion, the Eunice Chamber of Commerce, and the City of Eunice. The center served and facilitated the soldiers during the war and the returning veterans after the war. After World War II, complexion of the post changed somewhat because of the new faces and the new blood that came into the post. These were the World War II veterans that came in. As the result of the World War II commanders and the executive committee were elected, and the membership reached a peak of 384 members. In the style of their predecessors, the World War II Legionnaires continued every phase of the Legion work. In addition to that, they outfitted one of the finest rifle squads in the state. The rifle squad was organized to pay tribute and homage to the returning war dead. On May 22nd, 1971, the American Legion donated the post home to the city of Eunice for a value of $40,000. It was to be used by the city with the stipulation that should the city cease to use it for city functions, it would be returned to the American Legion. The American Legion has long since quit having meetings at that post, and they currently have their post meetings at my Veterans of Foreign Wars home on Highway 190. So they don't have their own post home that they have their meetings in anymore. On September 10th of this year, 2019, the city of Eunice voted to return the building to the American Legion post. The building has served the city in many capacities, and currently it has the food bank in it. The building is now in need of extensive restoration if it is to remain a jewel of the city. The American Legion is not financially able to achieve this on their own. And the American Legion is currently in the process of selecting a new owner who can restore it faithfully and honor those World War I veterans who had the vision to build it. An honorable restoration is estimated to cost in the neighborhood of $100,000 just for the exterior and the landscaping of the building. A full restoration would cost anywhere between $500,000 and $1.2 million, depending on what the final use of the building would be. Suggestions have ranged from mixed use, offices, and/or condominiums. Now, the American Legion desires to see the building restored and become the catalyst for economic development in the downtown area of the city of Eunice. We have to find the right person to do this and not put it in the hands of someone who will demolish it and build something new. We've seen what happens when you destroy a beautiful building in the name of upgrading. When we saw the beautiful City Hall destroyed in 1982. And if you've ever seen the pictures of the old City Hall, it was just a gorgeous building. And I wish it was here today for the sake of the city. The building deserves a respectful restoration and to keep its place with the city as a place of honor for those few World War I veterans and all the rest of the veterans who have served the community. The city is 125 years old. The American Legion building is 85 years old. God bless the city of Eunice, the American Legion building, and God bless America. I would like to thank contribution for me to be able to come up here and share some of this information with you today. To R. Nolan Musa, who is deceased, for some of the articles that he wrote about the post home over the years. And also to Alma Reed and Van Reed, because they spent a long time collecting all of this information and sharing it with me so that I can in turn share some of the history with you. And I'm here today to tell you that hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow, we will have selected the person who's going to restore that building. And I think it's very exciting. And probably by the very beginning of January, you'll start seeing a lot of activity happening around that building that should get you excited, and the building is going to be beautiful. What it's going to end up being on the inside, I'm not sure. As I say, there's been a lot of suggestions for different things, but in any case, what it inevitably ends up being, we will, as a community, be able to point to that building and say, it's a jewel, and we love that building.